valued listeners, cherished friends, and others. Welcome to another episode of Freshwaves. I'm your host, Brenda Masson. Today we're going to be speaking with Keith Pitts. He is the guru of cross-border shopping. Nobody knows cross-border shopping like Keith Pitts. We have talked in the past about how to get the best deals for yourself in a retail atmosphere, going down just for your family's sake, for your sake, whatever. Today, however, we are going to be focusing on getting the best deal for the small retailer here in Canada. You have a small business, you're a small business owner, you want to know what you can go across the border and get at a more affordable price so that you can pass those savings on to your clients and cherished friends and such not. Anyway, before we start, we have to say hello and thank you for Jason Rumball and all the work he does behind the board. He is, of course, the guru of tech. And we have Ivan Harris, who is the man about town, the guru of everything, Ivan Harris. And thank you for all he does here at Fresh Waves. So let's start. Hello, Keith Pitts.
Hello, Brenda.
How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate that. And,
we love having you here on the show because we always learn something interesting. And, you know, there is something to be said about the fact that in your book, which is 2 sides of 49, you can learn all kinds of tips about going for your own personal use across the states and getting things like Hall's cough drops and vitamins and paint and an oil change and things like that.
Whatever the people aren't shopping in the small business owner shop for.
Right. So now we're going to talk about the small business owner, and you're going down to the States. I'm going to start with the small business owner who has a fleet of trucks or a fleet of cars that they need for their business, and they're going to get their snow tires put on in Buffalo. Because if you've got more than one vehicle especially, you're going to have quite a savings.
Yeah, sure are. And, and we'll talk a little bit about, that and how to get the goods across and even, some of the things that people don't think of, which is, your fixtures and stuff like that for the store. If for the new store owner who's just saying, boy, I'd like to, set up my shop and I've got a X amount of money and I need to buy computers, I need to buy desks, I need to buy counters, chairs. And chairs and all that kind of stuff as well. So, right from the very get-go. But, as you said, on vehicles, certainly anything pertaining to your vehicle, whether that is new items for the vehicle, whether that is maintenance on the vehicle, it's far cheaper to go across the border to get that in the Buffalo area for, of course, all of those that are in Ontario and which is our listenership, and well worthwhile. And as I always relate the story that when we talk to the consumers about just being the average consumer who's looking to get a brake job done on a vehicle, and the fact that I had that done here and went to the dealer, and the dealer quoted me $1,300 to get a full brake job done on the vehicle here. And so I decided, look, I'll go to that secondary marketplace, and I'll go down to Midas and one of those, type of shops and get the quote from them. And yeah, it was a saving of a couple $100, So rather than $1,300 what the dealer wanted, I was going to be able to get that for $1,000, $950 or whatever. So my impetus then was to, give a call down to the States and say, what can I get this done for down there? And Pep Boys, which is like a Canadian Tire, pretty well focuses on the automotive marketplace. Good quality parts, all brand name. If you want Firestone tires, you want Dunlops, you want Borg Warner brakes, you want whatever it is. That's what they carry. So I'm not talking about an importer that's bringing in most of its stuff from the Orient or anything from that. And I called Pep Boys and I told them the make and model of my vehicle and told them what I wanted for it. And I was given a quote with tax in of about $485 to do that brake job on the car. So, if for a one of, $300, $400 in my pocket, that was well worth it. If you're a small business owner and you've got 3 or 4 cars or a couple of pickup trucks that you're using or a delivery van or something like that, what that cost is going to be when you're taking it to, the regular dealer to have that service or to the other shop. And you can get all of those services done there. And if you're going to save, let's say you've got, half a dozen vehicles and you're going to be able to save $500 per vehicle over the course of a year to have
That's
that
a
service.
significant savings.
You got $3,000 more in your pocket to play with.
Right.
You know, that can go towards fixtures, go towards advertising. You know, sending
Yeah.
flyers out to the local.
Right.
You know, out to all of your local audience and do that, or social media, or whatever you want to spend it on. So, significant from that standpoint.
Wow.
What I always recommend, you know, as I say to the consumer and to the small business owners, is phone ahead, do your shopping, make sure that it's cost effective for you. The other thing is, if you're a Monday to Friday business, not a problem. The shops are open down there on Saturday and Sundays, so you don't have to take your truck or your vehicle out of commission for a day during the week for someone to go down there and do that. They can go down on a Saturday or Sunday, pre-book your appointment, have the service done, and bring it back. Okay?
Do some shopping while you're down
Do
there.
some shopping while you're down there. Now, the next thing is, too, you know, well, you know, that's nice to do that, but now how do I get it back across the border? Well, you know, as I say to everybody, you declare everything. When you come to that Canadian border, you declare what you've had, you know, what you've purchased, the work you've had done, or anything from that standpoint. You declare that, and you pay the appropriate tax on it. So in the case of the brakes, when I had the brakes done down there, I said to the service manager at Pep Boys, I said, you know, could you give me 2 invoices? Now, as soon as that, their ears perk up and go, oh, you know, he wants a phony invoice for going across the border. Well, that isn't what I wanted. What I wanted was an invoice for the service and an invoice for the parts.
Right.
Because when I come to the border, what I'm going to claim is the parts. I'm not going to claim the labor that was done outside of the country.
Right.
So that $500 brake job only had $225 worth of parts on it. So if I claim those parts when I come to the border, and especially if the parts are made in the U.S., guess what? I don't pay any tax on them. You know, I literally just pay the HST to bring that across the border. So rather than HST on the $1,300 brake job that I had done at the dealer, I'm paying HST on the $250 worth of parts that I'm bringing across the border.
So it's a win-win all around.
Win-win all around, and as I say, more money in your pocket so that you can, you know, advertise more to your client base.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the small business owner, and I think I said earlier by mistake that that's a retailer, and that's not the case. A small business owner could be a plumber, could be an electrician,
Absolutely.
could be a mechanic who's looking for parts.
Buying tools, could be a landscaping company.
Right.
You need new lawnmowers. You need, new tools. You need a trailer, you know, that you want to tow along behind you. I picked up a trailer for a friend of mine down the States. He wanted one of these cargo trailers. And, the cargo trailer was about $3,700 up here, and it was $1,995 down the States. And it was made in the U.S. So, again, there's that same thing. You know, you bring it back across the border, you claim it, made in the U.S., under NAFTA, there's no duties and taxes on it. You pay the HST, and he put about $900 in his pocket for that trailer to bring back for his business, as opposed to buying that same thing in Canada.
It's almost unreal. I mean, when you put it out like that, and the way you speak about these things, it's almost unbelievable. But it is true. These are all facts. These are all proven
facts. All facts, all written about, researched, and everything else. You know, what we are here is I think we're a very complacent population. Canadians are, you know, I don't know if it's our British heritage from old or what it was, but, you know, that stiff upper lip and, oh, yes, that's what it costs, so that's what I'm going to pay. And we kind of get locked into that, and especially if we're in small business, because we feel, oh, well, we're just going to pass that on to our consumers. You know, if our cost of doing business is more, then I'll just add that to the cost of them doing. So if you're you're running an HVAC company and you're going to sell somebody new filters for their furnace, and you've got your overall cost to it, you've got your cost of buying those filters from your manufacturer, you're going to add that up, and now when somebody walks in the door, you're going to want $21 for a furnace filter that astute consumer knows they can get down in the States for about $7.95.
Oh, you hope. So it's actually interesting with the internet now. We are more educated as a consumer, yet I don't think we're really caught up as to how much we can save by going directly to the States. And the States is close.
Yes.
It's not like we're talking about a 14-hour drive here. We're talking about an hour drive, 2 hours from Toronto.
Sometimes I can be in Buffalo faster than I can be in downtown Toronto from my place at Lake Simcoe.
Right.
By going around the top and, that 407 down and crossing the border,
Yep.
I can literally be in Buffalo faster than I can be at Lakeshore, Toronto.
Right. Okay, so for the small business owner, this is going to be something that they should be looking into, because you're going to shave a lot off your bottom line by just being a little smart.
Yeah, by being so, and I think, and you've got to still work within the confines of your business.
Right.
And a number of businesses are locked into buying from certain suppliers.
Right.
They may be franchises, they may be other things that have to buy the napkins or the cups or the parts or something and they don't want to, destroy that relationship with their existing supplier. But I'll almost bet that every one of those small business owners have priced something to a consumer, and that consumer has said to them, well, hold on, I looked at online for this, and I can get that online for a third of what you're charging me for the same thing. And now you have to go into that explanation of, oh, yes, well, but there's the hassle of getting it here, and you've got it. Well, there's no hassle of getting it here anymore. I mean, I can buy anything that I want out of the U.S. or out of China. And if I'm prepared to wait the 3 or 4 days or whatever it is, I'm going to get that item, a lot cheaper than what it is. Again, we're talking about the automobile. It was the same thing. I needed a windshield washer pump. And again, where do you go? You go to the dealer. How much is it? It's $59 at the dealer. And by the way, they didn't stock it. So I was going to have to wait, 7 to 10 days for them to get it in stock. So I ordered it off of Amazon for $7.95. And when the thing comes, it comes in a Kia box. I mean, it's from the manufacturer anyway.
Right.
It's not like I subverted anything, but what I did was I cut out all of those middlemen. So rather than going to the Kia dealership here, who's probably, and I'm giving them cut, they might have to pay $29 for it because it's been uplifted by, Kia Canada to the Kia dealership, which then's got to make their money on top of it. So I just said, I don't want the dealership, I don't want the importer, I don't want Kia I don't want anybody else in the middle. I'm going to go directly to that source that's selling those things for $7 down in the U.S., and I'll pay the $5 shipping to get it up here in 2 days, which is 4 days faster than I could have got it at the dealer. And the same holds true on appliance parts, and I'm using Kia as a car, but I mean, I could use GE for a new part for my stove, or Frigidaire for a new part, ice maker for my fridge. All of those items can be readily found by the astute consumer by doing 5 minutes worth of searching on Google.
Wow. All right, we're going to take a little break here, our first break of the day. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with how you can save some money for your small business by shopping across the border. You're listening to Fresh Waves. Our guest this morning is Keith Pitts, guru of shopping, cross-border shopping. And I'm your host, Brenda Masson. So stay tuned. We'll be back with more tips in just a second.
Hi folks, Kim Mitchell here. However you choose to get around, your ATV, your snowmobile, your boat, car, if you have a motorcycle, all these things take 100% of your attention and skill to operate safely. Alcohol impairs that, and bad things can happen. So, be smart, okay? You know what I'm going to say next.
This message brought to you from the Safe and Sober Awareness Committee.
Back on Fresh Waves. Now, Keith, you have a story about a small business owner who was having problems stocking parts because they cost so much money to have a vast inventory of parts.
Correct.
Tell us the story.
Yeah, so I'll relate the story to you. This was a fellow who services solar water heating systems, in-floor water heating, radiant water, heating and that type of stuff. And related a story to me that with a customer, went and found a defect within a system where that person needed a pump that would move the water from the rooftop solar system down into the storage tank and recirculate that so that the water would be heated by the storage. Now, his cost for that part was about $475. which he sold for about $560, and then of course put his service rate on top of it. So he was in a call where he went into the customer and basically said, "This is the part you need," and said, "I don't stock the part. I'm going to have to order it from the supplier." Unknown whether that supplier was, somewhere in Canada, it was a warehouse out west, whatever, but quoted the price and said it's going to be, that $569, and it's probably going to take 7 to 10 days to get the part for you, meaning one, that the customer didn't have the use of his system during that period of time, and two, he was going to have to come back for another service call to install it. So we talked a little bit about it. He gave me the part number. He says, "This is the part." He says, "It's a common part that seems to be failing, and I can't afford to stock them." He says, "So I've got a customer who's upset because he's now got to wait 7 to 10 days to get the part." And so we did a little bit of research on the part, and we found that we could source that part directly from the manufacturer in the U.S. for $99 U.S.
Oh,
okay.
my.
And
That's crazy.
It's crazy. And he was paying $450 was his wholesale cost for the part here in Canada. Okay? And that part's coming from the same supplier. It can only come from one manufacturer.
Right.
So here's where we get into that thing again about, how many hands have to touch something before they get to the small businessman, before they get to the consumer. So somebody down that chain, when he orders that part from his wholesaler, then has to go into a system and order that part, which may be from a master wholesaler, which then in turn orders it from the same person that we were able to search on, down in the U.S. So established a direct relationship with that manufacturer, got the one part that he did need, so he was able to buy that for the $99 U.S., was able to send it up here, UPS Express, get it up here in 2 days, cost $30 or whatever it was, and phone the customer and say, "Hey, I've got some good news for you. I've got the part in stock for you, and by the way, the $549 I quoted you, I'm going to be able to sell it to you for $399. Still making the same margin that he was making on the $450 one. So instead of saying I've got to make $100 here at this end, I can now make $100 at my landed cost end, and the consumer is now a friend for life because he's great.
Getting a deal.
I'm getting it fast. I'm getting that. So did that, supplied it. Happy customer for life probably. Mm-hmm. And here was this fellow with this plumbing organization that turned around and said, "Well, I've been ordering these for the last year and a half because of failure. I can't afford to stock them at $450 a piece, but I can afford to stock one or two at $99.
Right.
So now he's going to place an order. It's going to be in his inventory. So the next time he goes on a service call, he can say, "Oh, I've seen this before, and guess what? I got the part in my truck."
Right.
And I'm going to be able to get you up and running, get a happy customer who's going to come back to you for ongoing services just through the sourcing of one simple part direct from the U.S. supplier, as opposed to going through all of the machinations to get that part through his usual channels here in Canada.
You'd think that the usual channels would be getting a little smarter, and they would also be trying to source things in a different way.
Well, but they're so big now, and they're so comfortable.
Right.
That's the problem. That's the problem. These mega distributors that we have now, are in place where they're stocking these items. They're servicing a specific community. The electrical community is being supplied by them. The plumbing community, the small business people that we're talking about, the HVAC people are used to going to this same one, used to putting the normal uplifts on it, waiting the time, and guess what? The consumer's used to paying exorbitant prices too.
Yeah.
And now the consumer's getting smarter. They're just turning around saying, "I'm not going to pay that anymore. I'm getting, a finite amount of money in my pocket at the end of each month. And if I've got to give you $500 out of that, that leaves me with maybe, not being able to buy certain Christmas gifts or go somewhere or put new tires on my car because that $99 part cost me too much in Canada."
Right. Okay, so if someone's going to be bringing in these parts on a regular basis, would it be cost effective for them to have a post office box somewhere in the U.S.?
Yeah, if we're talking about one part here, but let's multiply that. Let's say that you're looking at 25 different SKUs that you're using on a regular basis, and these parts are coming from the U.S. Then for the sake of setting up a P.O. box down in Buffalo, whether that's in Niagara Falls, New York, or Buffalo, New York, you can set up a P.O. box down there for literally, $7 to $10 a month. U.S.
Right.
And you can have all of those items shipped to that P.O. box and then just go and collect them on a once a month trip down or once every 2 weeks that you feel that you want to go down. And again, you don't have to do it during the week and take that out of your business schedule. You can go down on a Saturday or Sunday, take the wife down, do a little bit of shopping at the same time, have a cheap meal, go and watch a football game or something like that.
Or a hockey game.
Or a hockey game.
A hockey game at half the price.
At a quarter of the price.
A quarter of the price.
Yeah.
You're right.
And come back again.
Yeah, wait for Toronto to be playing, the Leafs to be playing Buffalo
Yeah,
in Buffalo
yeah,
and go down
exactly.
for a game. I think you have to order those tickets about a year and a half in advance. But other than
Yeah.
that, you can probably get tickets at a good
exactly.
price.
And the same thing goes not only for parts that you're doing for resale, but also for your supplies. I've got a girl down the street from me, and she runs a painting company, and same kind of thing. Always going through, a dozen rollers a day and, 15 paintbrushes and all that kind of stuff. And saying, well, I buy these or I've got to buy them at Canadian Tire, or I've got to buy them at, wherever it is. And comparing the prices with what she could get those out of a U.S. supplier at. Again, exactly the same thing. I'm buying them for a third of the price that I'm buying here. So that brings my cost of business down.
Seems like you just have to be a little bit creative.
You do.
And
you do.
go to your blog.
Yeah.
So tell people how to get information from the blog and stuff. Just
Yeah,
so
sure.
they know.
Yeah, my website is www.twosidesOf49. That's the number 2 and the number 49 and .com. And the explanation, of course, is that the 49th parallel is what separates Canada from the U.S. And so we work on two sides of it. And you can always send me an email. As I said, I've done some consulting for a number of small businesses as well, where they've related issues and problems to me and said, how do I do this? How do I do that? And we sit down and talk about it and put that together and buy the wife a book at the same time, and she can do her retail sales and stuff when she's down there. So yeah, by all means, I invite anybody to go on to that. It's good. And, we had just talked before as well about, setting up a business. And again, what it costs now to set up with regards to fixtures and lighting and display cases and all those kind of things. Again, don't limit yourself to shopping just in this country that somebody says, where do I get a display case? Well, you have to go to XYZ, and they're the only ones in Ontario that do that. Well, okay, but you might have 4 suppliers across the border that have got the same display case, or it may be the identical display case that they're selling to XYZ up here in Ontario, and cut out that middleman wherever possible, and increase your revenues, increase your margins, and also allows you to be more proactive with the customers.
Okay, so I understand all of that, but we did have a question from a listener that I think is a little intriguing. And what she said is, then how do you do your quality control? You can't, it's a sight unseen, untouched. You're not picking up the item before you order for a lot of this stuff. If you're doing online, taking out the middleman. Usually at the middleman stage, you can walk into a showroom somewhere, see the items that you want to buy, pick them up, feel them, look at them, check them out. And if you're not doing that, how do you do your quality control?
I think back in the old days, I would agree with that. But most of the suppliers now, I've gone into the major electrical suppliers and I've gone into the major plumbing suppliers. It's a counter. You're not walking up and down aisles picking up things and looking at them. You're walking to a counter and you're saying, I need, 10 times part number 2352 dash whatever, or 4 of these or 3 of them. And that's anything from, as I said, from appliance parts to electrical to plumbing parts or anything from that standpoint. And most of these suppliers in the U.S., they're running a business too. They're supplying a market that's 10 times larger than Canada. So they're not distributing, subpar parts to their purchasers down there. All you're becoming is one more source for them to sell to. You just happen to be, quotation marks, in Buffalo, as opposed to being, anywhere else. Now that is, and that is some limitations when you start buying, bulk orders. Some of the U.S. suppliers will not sell and ship to Canada, because they may be stepping on the toes of the Canadian supplier that they're already selling to.
Right.
So that's why I recommend that if you get into this seriously, where you're starting to look at resale of goods, that you set up that Buffalo entity so that you have a U.S. tax ID, you have a phantom location there, you do everything, and you're bringing those back. And then if you do have any concerns with quality problems or anything from that, then you're just another Buffalo-based business sending that part back and asking for a replacement or an RMA. No different than you would anywhere else. Interesting to note, I read an article a couple of months ago that Canadian Tire right now, 11% of the goods that we're finding at Canadian Tire are coming from Asia. Okay?
Wow. And
72% of the goods at Canadian Tire are coming from the U.S. and outsourced. So we're only looking at that now at about 15%, 16% of what Canadian Tire sells is made in Canada.
And Canadian Tire
Yeah.
isn't even majority Canadian.
No,
owned
exactly,
anymore.
exactly.
There you go.
So 11%. Yeah.
Well, we've got more tips and tricks coming up in just a few minutes. We do have to take a little break. We're talking with Keith Pitts this morning, shopping guru. You're listening to Fresh Waves, and I'm your host, Brenda Masson. We will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.